You can foster a creative culture in your classroom and with your students by modeling, first of all, the creative process, but also showing your vulnerabilities, showing that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, and that we can always go back to the drawing board.
In my learning environment, we first established that we need a space in which we can all take risks. That space has to be safe, supportive, and non-judgmental. It's cultivated by celebrating our risks and reframing our failures as evidence of growth. It does not happen on its own. We work toward it every day.
I don't emphasize grades. I want my kids to feel like their work matters. And part of the way I do that is I publish their work. We post their work online. So when they're creating, they know that their work actually has purpose and intention.
Celebrate the great examples that you see. If students are able to see what their peers are doing and it is working for them, then they might be able to cherry pick those ideas and use them themselves.
I like to build time into my schedule to get to know my students. I'm explicit. I mark my calendar as discover the interests and passions of my students.
And it's so important to create experiences for kids where they all feel empowered and heard and valued in a space that offers them open-ended questions so that they can practice the skill of finding solutions in a world that is unpredictable and ever-changing.
For educators to foster a creative culture that amplifies the creative potential of our students, we need to consider two things: the individual and the collective. With regards to the individual, our objective is to ensure that each student learns the skills and attitudes of creativity and is given the opportunity to experience and practice these skills to build creative muscles. With regards to the collective, our objective is to create a learning environment where each student feels free to think and act creatively. An environment where risk-taking and collaboration is encouraged, multiple means of engagement and expression are provided, and feedback is built into every activity to enhance each learner's creative potential.
Fostering a creative classroom culture requires at least three things. First, it needs to be a safe space. This means there can be no demeaning and no bullying, particularly around students' mistakes, either by students or by teachers. It needs to be a place where risk-taking is safe and, in fact, even appreciated. Second, it needs to be a place where intrinsic motivation to learn, is supported and enhanced. This means students need to understand the meaning in what they're doing, they need to see purpose in their work, and they need to see themselves making meaningful progress. Once in a while, this would also entail having some choice so that students feel as if they have some input in their engagement in the things that they're doing in the classroom. And finally, of course, the third thing is we need to have opportunities to engage in creative projects and activities.
The same principles apply to distance learning. We should provide them with additional means of expression and place even more emphasis on risk-taking so they feel confident to push the boundaries in our absence.
As teachers, if we want our students to be more creative, to take more creative risks, and we have to model such behaviors in the classroom and outside the classroom. At the same time, as teachers, I think we need to make an effort to not always put so much stress on GPA, on scores, on academic performance, but give our students the freedom to play with ideas, the freedom to make creative mistakes, the freedom to enjoy learning for the sake of learning.
I try and mark the process rather than the end result in order to help my students learn how to embrace risk. When you just mark the end result, students will go for the safe option. But when you mark the process, it becomes about how far they can push themselves, what they're thinking, and their creative process. Always put more marks in the process than in the end product.
Here are 5 steps to foster a creative learning culture in any environment. Make creativity a goal that every student should strive for. Make time for exploration. Encourage risk-taking as much as possible. Provide opportunities for recognition and support. Create diverse groups for group tasks.
As teachers, we are not the sage on the stage, but we are actually coaches and facilitators, and we are co-learning, we're co-creating with our students, and we nurture a safe, psychologically safe space in which failures and mistakes are embraced and celebrated.
An ideal creative learning culture for me is a space where everyone feels safe and excited to share their work with others. The goal is to create the most interesting work possible, not just to get it done. When we focus on our process, on defining a problem, on generating ideas, working on craftsmanship, giving and receiving feedback, and reflecting on what we've discovered, we never focus on grades. The work that my kids do is so much better. They're so much more likely to really engage with it because they know that the process matters. The outcome is less important.
So it's more like a community rather than the teacher teaching the students. It's about everyone collaborating and sharing and refining ideas.
And in the end, even though there would be lots of focus, there would be tough times because the kinds of persistence that it takes to solve problems is not always easy. I think an ideal creative classroom would always have room for laughter. I don't think I've ever been in a creative space that didn't. Because if it's not safe enough to laugh, it's probably not safe enough for creativity either.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Click the link in the description below to explore more free online professional development, and click the link on screen to subscribe to the channel for more videos.